Hello everybody. Alright, so today I'm going to be showing you guys how to install a Sear Touch on a machine that doesn't already have one. In this case it's an Ender 3 version 2. It's a pretty straightforward installation. The biggest differences you're going to have between the V2 and say an Ender 3 Pro is the screen. A V2 has this kind of a screen on it. This kind of screen is required in order to install Mariskok firmware. If you don't know what that firmware is yet, I'll have a link for you either on my website or elsewhere. I will make sure I put it up somewhere for you guys. It's a great firmware if you have a V2 machine. It completely does 100% better than the stock firmware it's on the machines. A few people have brought me machines with them and I've added it to it for them. And it just unlocks a whole lot of features that you don't have with your stock firmwares. So that's the biggest difference between this and the 3 Pro. The 3 Pro or even the regular Ender is going to have that blue screen. This will still work, but you won't be able to use a lot of the features this has if you don't have this kind of a screen. You can upgrade a 3 or 3 Pro to have this kind of a screen, and then you can run that firmware. Even on the noisy board, you don't have to upgrade both. You can upgrade just the screen and it'll work. But if you're going to go that far, you might as well buy the combo kit and get the silent board as well, so you don't hear something like you hear in the background right now. I have some machines being tested. One of them is a Ender 3 Pro, and as you can tell, it's pretty noisy behind me. That's what they sound like. So, big difference. But anyway, we're going to get started on doing this right now. So the first thing I'll do is I'll show you what the kit looks like when you buy it. If you buy a CR Touch from Creality, not a BL Touch, but CR Touch, this is what you're going to get. You're going to get this little box. This box is actually what I use to keep for all my screws. It's a great little box for that. It is magnetically sealed and taped shut when they are brand new. I've already opened this one up. But all you're going to do is just lift this cover up. There's going to be a card in here. And there is your stuff. So you've got your CR Touch here and a couple of these brackets. Different brackets for different machines, and they fall out pretty easily. This is for one type of a hookup. This is generally for a... I think that one's for the CR series. This one here is the one we're going to be using. This goes right on here behind the shroud. And we also should have a third one hiding out in here somewhere. We have this one as well. Actually, you know what? I take that back. This may be the one for the version 2. This is the one for the regular Ender 3 or Ender 3 Pro. So I believe it might be this one we're using. We'll find out. Those are the 3 brackets it comes with. Obviously comes with the CR Touch itself. Comes with a wiring harness, so some screws for mounting stuff, and some zip ties. That's pretty much everything that's in the box. So we're going to go ahead and begin by bringing our gantry up so you have room to work above our bed. We're not damaging anything. I might remove the glass plate just because I'm going to be putting stuff on there. And we're going to go ahead and remove the shroud and begin preparation. Remove these zip ties to install the harness. I'll show you guys a couple of tricks for this, because this is actually kind of nasty to get through there. But I have a really simple trick that's going to help you guys out. Alright, so while you guys weren't looking, I kind of did a few preparation steps. I got my screws out of the packaging and put everything kind of together. I unraveled the wire, got it ready to go. And I'm just kind of moving some of the stuff I don't need away, throwing it out of the way. Alright, so the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to raise this gantry up even more. So to do that, if you haven't seen this before, you just turn this little coupler right here, and it brings the gantry up. And I'm just going to kind of bring it up to a height that I'm comfortable working with, and I'm going to pull the glass off this real fast. I'll put those in this box. And that just protects my surface from when I'm working on this machine. So I tend to put things down on the bed when I'm working. and I don't want to like mar my bed surface if I can help it. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to remove these. Now, quick tip, if this gantry won't stay up, sometimes they want to come down really easy. You can always put something under here, filament box or something that fits in here, just to keep your gantry up while you're working on it. So we're going to start by removing my old zip ties here. We want to free up this wiring harness. Be very careful when you're cutting these off that you're not cutting any of the braiding or anything. You're just cutting the zip tie head off. Alright, and we're going to actually go all the way down because I need them all free. And push this zip tie back to here. Alright, looks like we're free. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and remove this. There is a screw back here. I'll try to keep you guys in frame for this. I'm sorry if you're not. Alright, there's a screw back here. I'm just going to loosen that up. Now these plastic shrouds, I've said it before, this is one of the worst parts of this machine in my opinion. The reason why I say that is they break really, really easy. The more times you take these on and off, the chances of breaking the tabs off these are really high. Alright, it's held on by a tab that sticks through the plastic right here, and a couple of wraparound tabs back there. And as you can see, this one is getting, yeah, that one's pretty much done. I might have to replace this part, because these things are just, they're that easy to break off. This may not go back on there correctly. A lot of the times what I've been doing for V2 machines is I'll actually purchase the metal box that you find on an original ender, as well as this back plate, and replace both as a kit. And the end result is you have the metal box instead of this thing. This is just horrible. And I might end up doing that with this one if I have the parts here. Maybe I'll make that part of the video as an optional upgrade that you can do. But either way, I've got it off. I'm going to go ahead and slide my shroud back. And once again, I'm not going to zip tie it this time because I'm going to be working with that shroud. I'm just going to pull it back like that so it's out of the way. And kind of move my fan out of the way. We don't have to remove the hot end. We don't have to remove anything else. That's all we have to do with this step so far. I'm going to remove this bolt, which is what holds that shroud in place. Alright, so let me take a peek and see if I have those parts. Okay, so I do have the parts to do this. So I'm going to go ahead and do this. If you're not going to change out this plate, you can go ahead and skip ahead to the next part of the video, because you won't have to do this part. But I'm going to go ahead and do this. For those of you who want to get rid of that plastic shroud, you will go on to you can go to my my website. I have the direct links to these, but if not, all you're looking for is a backing plate for an Ender 3 Pro, not a V2. They're different. They're very slightly different on how these hook up. It has to do with the spacing and some of the screw holes and stuff like that. Alright, so you will need this backing plate. I think it's right there, it's that hole. That's different. I don't remember exactly which ones this is. Let me stop this for a minute. Okay, so it turns out I do have the parts to do this upgrade. Well, change to this metal box. This is a used one. The kit that you would get would have everything pre-assembled, the fans on it and everything. And you would also need a backing plate. Obviously this wouldn't be on there, but anyway. The reason why you would need that backing plate is this is right here is an Ender 3 carriage plate. And this is the metal box, and you can see that the screw holes line up here. So it would actually get attached. On this one, this is the V2 version, it doesn't have the same pattern for holes. So it's just a hair off. Now, I mean, if you wanted to, you could just drill a hole above that and tap it, but that's pretty risky when these are pretty inexpensive and you're going to get the right fit every time buying the right part. So we do have to change this piece out in order to make this adapt onto there without modifying anything. So in my mind, it makes more sense just to buy both pieces. They're pretty inexpensive, especially now. Alright, so first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get my hot end out of the way. Like I said, if you're not doing this upgrade, go ahead and skip ahead until the next time stamp where I mention that we're going to be doing the actual regular installation of the probe. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do this upgrade. Alright, so I've got my hot end off. I'm going to release my belt tension, release my belts. Just like that. And that's really easy to do. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to loosen these wheels up so that I can release them from the carriage. So let's grab the right stuff real quick. And this, and we need you. I don't have to remove these completely, I just have to loosen them enough, significantly. That's probably good. There it is. And this one. Okay. And that should slide right off of here. We'll just get this removed the rest of the way. All I'm doing here is loosening these wheels up. And it clears. What you are going to get when you get this in, these are going to probably be tight. You're going to have to loosen them up. And if you have them loose enough, you should be able to just pop this right over. Like that. There you go. And all you've got to do at this point is tighten down these bolts slowly and carefully, a little at a time, until it kind of centers itself. You can kind of hold it with the Allen wrench like this. Let me just make sure in frame, see what I'm doing here. Alright. So I didn't go super tight on it, but I did bring it in. Okay, now I'm going to tighten it down. Okay. And I will adjust that after I get the belts on. Already feels like it's pretty good. So next I'm going to just slip my belts back on here. And I just got to find the groove in this. I'm sure you've seen me do this before in the other videos, but if you haven't, underneath here there's a little bit of a groove. This belt slides right in. If you look underneath at your own machine, it's pretty self-explanatory. One thing to look out for is to make sure that your belt does not come off of the motor in here. Make sure it's staying on. And now just put some belt tension back on this. Okay. Move it all the way to one side and we'll check belt tension. That's pretty good right there. Make sure it slides easily back and forth, and then we'll check the wheels. They actually feel really good right where they are. I'm not going to adjust the eccentric nut. If you don't know how to adjust this nut, again, reference the teardown video of the Ender 3, and that is covered in detail in there. Okay, so now that we have this going on, I'm going to go ahead and reinstall my hot end. Again, this would not be part of the normal upgrade procedure. This is just because I'm changing this over. Alright. It's going to be an interesting selling point when I sell this machine, but there's a reason for it. Yes, this machine will be up for sale, and members of the channel get better pricing than the general public does. Okay. It's time to charge the wow stick. It's getting dead. It doesn't want to tighten those down for me. Wrong one. Get the right Allen wrench here. Yeah, we'll just get these tightened up. Make sure my hot end is nice and straight. Okay. Nice snug. Those tight. Make your boots on there. Alright. So now I'm going to put my fans on this real quick. I'm not going to keep you in the video for that because, again, this is all extra stuff that you normally wouldn't have to do. I'm doing it because I'm doing the upgrade. So I'll be right back when this is all done. Alright, so while you guys weren't looking, I went ahead and put these on. This is the V, or the non-V2 version of the shroud with the correct air duct to blow the air this way. Little tiny screws hold this on there. If you're going to put a replacement fan in, whenever you replace the fan, always remember that the label is the output. So the air is going to be blowing towards me right now, coming from this label side. If you put this in backwards, it's not going to let this cool off, and you're going to do nothing but clog and have a miserable time until you figure this out and flip it around. Ask me how I know. It was not a fun week. It literally took me a week to figure that out. But anyway, that's when I was new. When we're new, we do dumb things, and that's okay. Alright, so when this mounts up there, this wire will be on the outside. It will get pinched if you put it across here, so it goes on the outside of this fan just like that, and it'll rest against the metal and we'll zip tie it all together. That comes later. We're also going to be using this bracket. This is the bracket for this particular Ender 3 Pro carriage plate. If it was the other carriage plate that we had on here, this would not quite fit. You'd get the bottom hole, but you wouldn't get this top hole to line up, and this would not be the right one. In that case, we would be using this particular bracket, which would line up with these two holes. Just like that. Alright, so this is the V2. So if you're using a V2 machine, you're going to mount this bracket in this fashion to this. In our case, we are using a Ender 3 backing plate. So it's going to be this bracket that we're going to end up mounting. But before we mount that bracket, we're going to take out our probe, and we're going to plug the wire into this probe. It only goes one way, and you should be really careful doing this because those are teeny tiny little pins and a teeny tiny little connector. But if you notice that the holes, if you look close enough, are only one way. In this case, if you're holding with the white wire to your left facing you, they're on the bottom. And if you look in the bottom of this, they line up in this direction. So just carefully line that up and plug it in all the way. Make sure it goes all the way in. Okay, next step is I'm going to mount this to this bracket. It's a lot easier to do this first with it out of the machine than it is to fight with it once it's on the machine. So I'm going to go ahead and grab a couple screws here. I've got a few extra screws in here from taking the shroud apart, so don't mind that. And we're going to go ahead and put it through the probe first. And then it goes up into that hole and gets tightened down. It's a little tricky. If you take your time and go slow with it, you'll get it to line up. Don't strip it. Just kind of slowly rotate this until you feel it starting to line up, and it'll eventually start itself. Light pressure, don't go crazy, because if it's cross-threaded, you're going to strip it out and you're going to be looking for a new bracket. Come see me if you need one. I've got a lot. Because not every machine gets this bracket, so I end up with a pile of them. Okay, same thing on this side. I'm going to set the bolt down right there. I'm going to let it just kind of sit. Use my Allen wrench to pick it up and guide it into its hole. And very gently and slowly turn, make sure that I'm actually engaging. I need to replace this Allen wrench because it is shot. It's stripped out. I need a new Allen wrench. So I'm just going to use my wild stick here to kind of feel it. And there we go. Alright, get that all the way in. And now that I know that it's started, I can go ahead and tighten these right up. Going nice and tight, because that's never coming apart again. It's going to stay like that. Okay, so there we go. We're mounted. We have our wire plugged in. It's really tough to plug the wire in after, that's why I have to do it first. We're mounted to the bracket, and the bracket will go here. We can't mount that to the machine without this other piece at the same time. This is probably the most difficult part of this whole process, because you have to line a whole bunch of things up at once. I'm going to try to do it with a stripped out Allen wrench. I know I need a new one. I've got a bunch of them. I just haven't grabbed one yet. But what I usually do is I'll usually put the bolt through this hole right here. Okay. And then I kind of like collect my wires up, making sure this one stays outside. Collect my wires up and have it almost in place. Kind of like that. And then I slip this behind. So now I've got everything together the way it's going to go, and I just feel around for that hole in the bracket, and just very gently and slowly turning, and see if it starts. And in my case, I got lucky. First shot, it did. Okay. Other bolt, this one's even harder, because you're going through this gap into that bolt hole. I usually just balance it very carefully on my Allen wrench. This might take a couple tries, especially if your Allen wrench is worn out. And if you can just get it into the first part, wiggle this around, it'll go through. And again, very gently and slowly feel it around until it gets started in the hole. Don't turn hard or you'll strip the threads right out of this. Once you're started and you know you're good, go ahead and tighten these down all the way. Okay, we'll make sure these are both good and tight. Alright, so the wiring, we'll address all this after the fact. When I neaten everything up, we'll take care of this. The next step is going to be get this wiring in. To do this, we're going to actually need to remove the electronics cover on the bottom of the machine and free up all the shroud. One other thing before I tip it over. Since I had to remove the electronics bay, there is a screw on the top here that holds the bay in. It needs to come out. Also, make sure if you have a memory card in the machine, you take that out too. Otherwise, it can get damaged. It probably won't, but it's a good idea to have that out of the way. And of course, this tool is not going to want to grab it. There it goes. So always take this bolt out before you go through the bother of flipping your machine over. If you have anything in your drawer, take your drawer out, set that aside, so you're not having everything like fly around inside that drawer. Alright, so now we're all set to flip this over. I'll be right back. Alright, I've got it flipped on its side now. I'm going to go ahead and remove this electronics bay cover. A good reminder when you're doing this is there is a wire that's connected to this cover. So when you're taking it out, make sure you remember that wires are connected to your board and don't just yank it off. So there's two short bolts, one long bolt in the back. Okay. Come on. There we go. Again, watching for this wire. This is your fan wires. If this is your first time opening this machine, this will be glued in. If it's not your first time, it shouldn't be. And just wiggle that right out. Try not to pull by the wires. Try to grab it by the plastic. You don't want to rip these wires right out of this. So this is where it was. It was plugged in right there. We can now see there's an open port. We'll remember where that goes. Alright. It's the only open port there. I mean, if you have to, take a picture of it with your camera on your phone or something so you remember if you think you'll forget. Couple more zip ties I gotta remove here. There goes one. And there goes the other. Okay, we'll just remove and loosen up these harnesses. We want the one that goes to the hot end, which is this one. This is a double sleeved harness in this machine. So we're going to be wanting to be on this inside one because this goes to the hot end. This is my thermistor, my hot end wires, and my bed fan wires. All one spot. They are just inside of this other tubing, but this is where we want to be. Now, like I said, I have a trick for getting the wire down through all of this because it doesn't want to just push through. This grips onto everything, and it's really hard to do. So I'm going to set up my trick for you, and I'll show you what I do to get this through easily. Okay guys, I had to reshoot a couple scenes here because they were so far out of frame, but we're just going to pick up where I was talking about, and that is we're going to be putting my filament through this wire to help pull the BL Touch wiring through. This is the hot end wiring. You can tell because you have the hot end materials here. You have the cooling fan, parts fan, hot end wires, hot end thermistor in this particular shroud. This is the one we're working on. So what I usually do is I'll take a piece of scrap filament long enough where it's longer than this tube. And I start by just putting a little bit of a bend on the end of it. You don't have to make it really sharp because if you do, it'll usually snap right here. Especially if it's a wet filament. But you just need like a bend like this. All this is going to do is guide it through the tube so it's not snagging. You're going to take your wiring and right along with the rest of the wires here, you're going to just kind of slide this in there. So once it's in there, it's going to start going along with the wires. You're just going to keep working it up like this. And it should pretty smoothly just follow along. If it gets snagged, you might have to like move the wiring harness around a little bit to kind of like help it along. But let's see if it's coming out yet. It's going to come out up the top. Oh, it already did. As you can see, it's poking through here. Alright. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take my BL Touch or Sierra Touch wiring. I'm going to attach it to this. And I'm going to do so in such a way where I'm going to put some tape around this part of it for strength to keep it on this filament. You'll straighten this out now. You don't need the hook anymore. And then I'm going to put some tape around this connector to this piece of filament just to make it kind of like a cone shape so it'll guide through there easily. Alright, so what I've done here is I've just put a piece of tape around both the filament and the wire to kind of give it some strength. I fold the end over so I can peel it off easily when I get down to the bottom. And here, all I did was I put some tape around the connector, down towards the filament to kind of give it a smoother transition so it doesn't snag inside of this tubing, because it will want to. And now this is still kind of nice and open here, so I'm going to go ahead and start it in there like that and kind of push it in, and then use the filament to pull it back. Now you might have to go back and forth and work this around a couple times. What I'm doing here is I'm just pulling my filament, and then I go up here and kind of just help the plug along by squeezing this this tubing, this shroud. So right now it's right here, and as I kind of like work the shroud around, kind of like squeeze it together to make it bigger, it'll want to go through there easily. So I just pull on the filament, and you can see it moving. Again, we'll just come down here. We're going to do the same thing. I'm going to move the shroud so it's a little wider there, and pull again. And I'm just using it to pull that connector all the way through this tube. If you need more shroud, you can always bring it this way too, because you can fix it later. Now that I've given it a nice big spot, and there's a whole bunch of it moved, we'll bring this back to the other side of it. It's right there. You can see the bulge. Okay, so here I am on the other end of my tubing. I've got my wire out. What I'm going to do next is make sure pulling all the slack through. So I just want to get it so it's pretty much tight with everybody else, just like that. Alright, that's all we're going to do with that part of it. Next, I'm going to go ahead and remove this tape and the filament, because you don't need it anymore, and we'll plug it into the board next. Alright, I've set my machine back up for a moment. I'm still working on the wiring. It's still kind of hanging out down here, but what I want to do now, before I do the electronics bay part, I want to go ahead and secure this wire. So I'm just going to put a zip tie around the wiring itself, not the shroud, just the wiring. Get the shroud out of the way in a second. Okay. Why I do this, I just want to keep everybody kind of nice and neat where it's going to go, so the slack is correct. So when I pull on this, it doesn't change anything here. We don't want this like super tight where it's pulling on this. We're going to have some play on it. We also want it to be pretty neat, so I will just do that. I'll trim that off. Now I'm going to go ahead and secure the shroud end just around the wires and the shroud itself. The ends of this get frayed the more you work with this, so nothing really to do about that. Don't worry about it. It's not going to hurt anything if it's frayed like that. I just want to keep a zip tie on there just so this stays tight while I pull on everything. The next step I'm going to do is I'm actually going to work this down. This is really loose right now. I want this to snug up around the wires, and it's just like it's like a snake kind of. You just kind of work it back like this. And as you do, you just kind of hold on to it and pull it tight. You see it tightens down around all the wiring. Just keep working it out until you get it really, really tight like that. And then you're just going to use a zip tie to hold that tension on there, so that it doesn't keep getting loose as you work your way back towards the electronics bay. You want to try to keep this snug. Sometimes you can have the zip tie started already, just not tight, just hanging out there, and you can just pull it like this. Slide your zip tie down to where you're working, and then pull it tight. Might be easier for you. Okay, so this now is staying where I put it. It's nice and tight there. You can see it's loose here. And we're just going to keep working our way down. Take the outer tubing and slide it out of the way if you have to, and work this way towards it. All the way down like this. Again, another zip tie to keep this tension on there. We don't want to have it come loose on us. Okay, come on, zip tie, cooperate. Alright, got a little loose there, so squeeze it and get it under the zip tie and pull it tight. Good enough. And now I'm going to go ahead and move the machine again so that I can work on the bottom part and this wiring below us. Alright, I got the machine on the side. I'm Already working on pulling this shroud tight, same thing as we did above. Same exact procedure. We get it a certain amount of way, we're going to go ahead and start a zip tie on it. I can pull it tight until I redo this, but again, here's the outer tubing. We'll just slide it back and we'll grab all the way back, if you can, all the way back to the zip tie. And we're just going to pull, work us so it stays super tight. Pull the zip tie tight on it to hold it. Cut the tail. And all the way up to the electronics bay. I usually put one on the end here just to keep it from sliding backwards. Okay. And the electronics on the board itself, in the bay. This is your jack for the your BL Touch. It comes on the board standard. Your clip is keyed. It's got it only goes in one way. It's got a couple tabs on it. Those goes towards the left as you're facing it this way. You're just gonna get that lined up inside of this. Move your video cable out of the way if you have to, and snap that in there until it's all the way in. Okay, looks like we're plugged in right there. Alright, and for this part, I just like to kind of keep these neat. So what I'll do is I'll pull it down tight like this. So I have those together, and then I use that to kind of double back on itself. Like that. And then I bundle it up with everybody else with a zip tie. Alright, put the zip tie on here. Make sure these are where I want them. Kind of like so. And zip tie down. Snip the wire, or the zip tie tail off. And that's it. Everybody's in the electronics bay. This is for a filament sensor. This was our Z, but this one right here, this is our fan. I guess on the plan, this guy right here is where our cover fan will go. So we have to make sure we have access to that when we finish all our wiring. Okay, that's just the Z limit switch I unplugged earlier. It can just live in here. It doesn't have to. If you want to take it out of the bay, you can. You just have to work it out of that corner. Alright, we'll get that part in. Just gonna arrange the wiring here the way it's supposed to be behind the machine. And that goes like that. Okay. Again, when you're putting the machine down, make sure you're careful how you're doing it so you're not hurting anything. I've already checked everything, so I know what we're doing is good here. I'm going to actually rotate it again on this side. Alright, just like so. You've already seen what you have to see inside the bay. Now, these wires all pass through this little channel right here. And this has some metal that's kind of sharp here. And they kind of like go between like this. So what I like to do here is I like to put something to protect this. Some machines will have a piece of cloth tape here already, but a lot of the ones in the auction, or if you work on them, you have to take the cloth off. You can't put it back on. It doesn't go on very well. So I use black duct tape here. It's tough enough to protect everything. So I'm going to go ahead and put that on. I'll be right back. Okay, there we go. Black duct tape is on. That stupid Z switch. Tuck that back in there. Okay. The rest of the wiring is just going to kind of like slide in here. And we need one more zip tie. Okay, got one. Typically I will start it first through this hole. So it's kind of just sitting in there, and I slide everybody in. Like that. And then close the zip tie around it. Make sure we're all in this tab right here. And then pull it tight. Also make sure the head of the zip tie is kind of up here, not down here, because it can get in the way of the printer laying on its feet. Everybody should be nice and kind of tight here now. Cut this tail. Alright, and that's that for the bottom of this. Just Put the electronics bay back on, cover. Alright, so I'm plugging in my electronics bay cover. The fan goes right in its slot. Make sure it's in all the way. Make sure these wires are in good and out of the way. This kind of just slides past everything until that little tab clears up top there. And I usually will start with this back screw first because it's a little tougher to put in. You have to kind of like get it right to the frame hole. And it's towards the top here, and just kind of feel around for it, and there it is, we got it. That was always tough to get started. These guys I put in one at a time, but I don't tighten them down at first because you might need to move this panel around to get the other one lined up. So if you tighten it down too tight, it's going to be too hard to move the panel around. See, for example, there we go. I had to kind of move the panel to line the screw up. Once they're all in there, go ahead and tighten them up. Alright, the last one. That's it for the bottom side of this machine. So we'll go ahead and stand it back up. Knocking stuff around my desk, don't mind the noise. Alright. Don't forget, we have to put this little screw in here. This is just to hold the top of the bay. Okay, as you can see here, this is the current firmware. Ender 3v2 with a 4.22 board in it. MPC. That's a manual mesh. That means it does not have the probe attached. That's what's currently loaded. So I'm going to shut this off. I've got the firmware on the card right here. Renamed it Firmware 123, which is a different file name that's on the machine currently. So when it sees that, it'll load it. So with the power off, I put the card in and I fire it up. This is going to take probably 15 to 20 seconds of a black screen. Don't panic, that's what it's supposed to do. It's taking the firmware and putting it into the machine now. So it's reprogramming to now use BL Touch. You'll notice that my BL Touch is currently red. Once this fires back up again, there it goes. You now notice the BL Touch has turned purple. That says it's ready to go. This now says Ender 3v2 4.22 board, BL Touch, Unified Bed Leveling, MPC ready. Now, BL Touch and Sierra Touch, as far as the software is concerned, synonymous. They're both the same thing. They both work exactly the same way. So it's not going to care what you put on there for a probe. It's still going to be the same software. So go ahead and zip tie these as I forgot to. And then we'll get into setting this up with teaching it where home is, which is really easy to do. Okay. Just put these on. Cut the tails. That just keeps things neat for me. Everything back here is already neatened up. And we're ready to go. So I'm going to go ahead and start with, under prepare, going to homing, auto home. The differences here is it's going to use the same limit switches as it did before for both X and Y, but it moves to the center of the bed and probes with the probe itself to set its Z. It no longer uses this limit switch. Alright, so that's done. I'm going to go ahead and go back, and under this menu there is a Z probe wizard. And when you click on Z probe wizard, you can grab your piece of paper and you'll slide it in position, ready to go. And I'm going to go ahead and move the Z to the home. What that's going to do is it's going to put the nozzle where it thinks the Z offset is. Okay, there it is. Slide my paper under here and you can see it. It's not close, it's pretty loose. So I'm going to move down the Z probe offset, highlight it by clicking on it, and I can adjust it. And I'm going to move the paper not putting any pressure on the plate, mind you. Move the paper while I move the knob until it bites the paper. Starting to right there. Yeah, I'm getting closer. There, I like that. Just enough friction. So my Z offset is negative 0.38. I click on it to keep it and back out, and I will go ahead and rehome. I'm just going to check it after. Okay, does the same procedure. It's going to go ahead and home down the Z. And I'm going to go back to Z Probe Wizard, and I'm going to actually ask it to move the Z to the home. And you can see that I still have that friction. It's even a little less than I want, so I'm going to click it one more down. Yeah, like that. Alright, so it kept the Z offset. We are now set with the Z offset. The next thing we would do is a manual bed leveling, so under bed tramming. By default, manual tramming is turned off. I want that on. And you can see here I can move front left, front right, back left, back right. I'm going to go ahead with my back left first. And this is cold. I'm not doing this with a hot bed yet. I'm just going to do this cold first. Get my hands off the bed, make sure I'm not resting on there and causing it to be wrong. Influencing any of the bed with any pressure. Alright, so back left, back right. And again, when you're doing leveling, just like I've done in my leveling video, you're going to want to make sure that you do this all the way around the bed. Now, if you're watching this and you know how to level already, you feel free to skip this part. This is just me getting everything roughly leveled out and getting ready to do my automatic probe test for the leveling with the actual BL Touch, or Sear Touch rather. But if you haven't watched the leveling video, this is basically what I do every time I level a bed. So it's probably good to know anyway. So I might need a new piece of paper since it's getting pretty beat up. Again, keeping my hands off of the wheels when I'm actually checking it, off of the bed, so I'm not pressing down and changing anything. Front right, this is all four corners. Pass number 1. Okay, pass number 2. We'll go inside of the back left again. I'm going to grab a new piece of paper because that one's getting pretty beat up. Oh yeah, see, that's way too tight. And I remember last pass was pretty good. Okay, back left, back right. Now that one's loose. Okay, front left. And I'm not going to go too crazy getting this perfect, and I'll tell you why. I'm going to be using the probe to really tune this bed in. And that's where this thing really shines. Alright, so this is the normal manual leveling you would do without a probe. I just do this the first time just to kind of like get it close. And that's pretty good. So I'm going to do 2 passes. So now I'm going to go ahead and go to mesh. Back, auto build mesh. It's going to home, and it's going to start probing the bed. It'll probably heat the bed up. Yes, it will. So I'll be right back when that's heated up. I'm not going to make you wait. Okay, the bed has heated up and it is beginning to probe. And what's interesting about having one of these is you can see here as it probes, it puts in a graph and it gives you a bunch of numbers. Now when I'm setting this bed, any bed up, I don't care about any third number. What I mean by that is you'll see like an example here, this one says 0.03. I don't care about the 3. I only care about 0.0. 0.0 means in relation to the first probe point, its home position, that's how far off it is. So 0.0 to me is perfect. 0.1 is 1/10 of a millimeter off. Your probe can adjust anywhere up to about 0.3. I don't recommend having it that far off, but it can. If you had a 0.3 something, it can adjust for that. So in this case, the mesh is now completed. It looks like my top right corner here is just a hair low. The bottom right is okay. The bottom left is a little bit low, and the top right is perfect. So using this graph, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to loosen, and I mean just a hair, just a little here and just a little there. I mean, we're talking about maybe like the tiniest turn ever. And I'm going to leave the front corner alone because that might adjust things and cause it to change. So I can either save or continue. If I hit continue, it's going to bring me back to the menu, and I can just do it again. If I hit save, it'll actually store that mesh. I want to rerun it because I want to see if I've changed anything. Bed's already warm, so I'm going to go right into it. So there's my 0 point in the middle. Obviously it's 0.00. And what it's going to do now is compare every point on the bed to its home position of 0.00 and tell me the variance between them. And if I did this right, you should see a 0.0 everywhere. You might have like 1 or 2 that are off a little bit if your bed has a little bit of a curve to it. But so far, I'm perfect. We'll see if we make it all the way. Oh, there's one. That spot right there is just a little high. But that could be just something in the bed's thickness, the glass, or we're talking about 1/10 of a millimeter imperfection. It's not a big deal. This corner is just a little low still. This corner is a little low, but I might leave. You know what? I'll bring it up just a little more. So again, just a little turn here, a little turn here. Hit continue, and we're going to run it again. And I'm just going to keep doing this until I get it perfect. I'm not going to torture you with watching me do this over and over again. I'll just show you the end results. Alright, I finally got the result I was looking for, all except for one, that one. I think that might be a high spot in the glass. You can see that most of these numbers are 0.0x, 0.07, 0.6, etc. I don't care about that third number. I only want to see 0.0. That tells me that I am 0.0 millimeters in relation to the center, which is the home Z position. That means I am exactly the same across the entire board as far as I'm concerned. If you talk about 0.06, you're talking about being 1/60th of a millimeter off. I honestly don't care about that. So that is exactly what you're looking for right there. That is the advantage of having this screen on this machine with the probe. It allows you to set your bed to perfection. That is a completely level bed. There is no question about it. Except for this one spot right here somewhere. And that could just be an imperfection in the surface where it's raised a little bit there. I can't feel it, and no print is ever going to show that. It's so far to the left that, first of all, you're probably never going to be printing there anyway. And even if you do, the compensation that this provides you will cause the bed to adjust by 0.1 for that spot. So it'll be the same no matter what. That's what this does. This compensates for any kind of bed defect that you might have. It can also be used as a tool for leveling your bed using this graph. So that's pretty much going to wrap up this video. Again, if you have a not a V2, but a Ender 3, Ender 3 Pro, it's going to be a little bit different. This is going to be your actual shroud. This is going to be the actual bracket you're going to use. If you have the plastic shroud with the V2, you're going to use a different bracket. Otherwise, the process is pretty much the same. Same firmware for the V2. If you have an Ender 3 or Ender 3 Pro, Mariscock will not work on that machine. You can't get the firmware for it. When you go to download it, you won't find your machine because it's not supported. you have to use either Creality's BL Touch software from Creality's website, or some other custom softwares that are out there, or you can compile your own. It's not that hard to do. I'm not a big fan of doing it with Marlin. Usually I will use a Sonic pad for an Ender 3 now. It is an investment. It's $150 for that, give or take, on the market right now. However, it improves these machines drastically because it takes away the firmware aspect of it, puts it all on a Sonic pad, and uses a Sonic pad to process it instead. It's a recommended upgrade for these. So that'll do it for this one. I'll see you guys in the next video. If you want to see certain things covered, just leave me some messages or some comments, and I'll try to cover whatever you're asking me to show you. Alright, thanks. Bye.